I'm Sienna, and today in Victoria we held the Achievements and Challenges seminar hosted by the Australian Council for Student Voice. It was an incredible event. It was so amazing to hear everybody's presentations and the incredible questions that the audience had for them as well. We did attempt to film the entire thing for you, but unfortunately the camera did cut out partway through. But we've put together some of the best parts of today, and I hope you enjoyed. And started with some amazing speakers. Before we head on to the Q&A, I'd like to invite up Emma Donaldson.
Hi everyone, and congratulations to Rosanna. That was a very good presentation. I had the privilege to work with some students at my past school, and I know what a joy it is and the great ideas you all have in the field. I'm Emma Donaldson. I currently teach Year 5 an Indigenous unit and Year 6 at Melbourne Girls Grammar School. To the country that we meet on, I recognise that we are engaging in a practice that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been doing for over 65,000 years, deep listening. A lot of what we do when we endeavour to create authentic student voice and agency in our classrooms involves learning to unlearn. And this is from our perspective as teachers. Our students, although familiar with the routines and systems of school, have an inbuilt ability for and capacity of voice and agency. It is us as teachers that need to unlearn in order to unlock it. This process of learning to unlearn is one I began to engage in when I had the opportunity to work with an exceptional group of primary school students in the Wurundjeri Voice Committee, a self-named committee governed by, for and with students from Year 4 through to Year 6. Who were they? They're a mixed bag. We have members who held existing internal leadership roles, so your school captains, vice captains, art captains, sport captains. We had students who ran the school newsletter, and we also had students who were on the ICT team who, upon being asked how to create slideshows and help out with some things, grew interested in the actual voice and agency that was happening and joined. We also had students who had thus far not been included in or given opportunity to directly lead school change. Their mission was to address how we as a school might begin to address the complex and important inclusion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representation, culture, knowledge systems and language, with a particular focus on the country of the area our school resided on, Wurundjeri country. As one Year 6 student said at our first meeting, we say we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet at every assembly, but how do we actually do that? We started with a shared vision, a document that acted as a vision statement written in the students' own words about who they were and what they stood for. All our outcomes, actions and projects stemmed from that document, the Statement of Commitment. To go back to my earlier point about learning to unlearn, here's what learning to unlearn means to me. It means intentionally challenging my own beliefs and thinking. I had to examine and change my own practice, and I had to redefine my role. I could provide resources, provocations and opportunities, but the heavy lifting would all be done by the students of the WVC. This heavy lifting meant that students engaging in deep thinking about big concepts such as representation, authentic acknowledgement, privilege and culture, as well as thinking on more granular levels like the run sheets they created for a visiting MP and providing the required materials for a visiting Indigenous artist. Like any heavy lifting, the students needed scaffolds and supports to keep conversations safe, productive and effective. Furthermore, these scaffolds or discussion norms meant students were able to express themselves and their ideas fully, often building on the ideas of the students that went before them. Through exploring purposeful questioning, understanding types of silences, and building knowledge on the intent of my questioning, I hope to establish an environment in which students were able to explore, make connections, and challenge their existing knowledge and understanding, acquiring new knowledge and setting meaningful goals for the future. I started at a point I felt most comfortable with, which was providing space for dialogue. Of dialogue, Robin Alexander says, dialogic talk is talk and more than talk. It is knowledge, learning, social relations, and education itself. Talk was where much of the magic of student voice would happen. Creating this space meant looking at the physical, which was mentioned by Rosanna Palmer, the actual timetable, which is just a nightmare. Finding space in the timetable was like finding 4-leaf clover. I found one with 3 leaves, I split it into 4 and did my best. This is where I'd like to acknowledge the privilege of the position I was in. I was working part-time and I had the support of the 5-6 teaching staff, which meant I could come in on my days off. The projects the WVC undertook were ambitious, they were big. They needed time and space. It was a labour of love for us all. If you love student voice and agency, you'll need it to love it wholeheartedly because it can be the most rewarding experience, but also the most frustrating in terms of eking out space in the timetable. Once we had the space physically and somewhere in the timetable, we worked on the metaphorical or the practical. We set up rules for talk. Rules for talk set up classroom norms for dialogue, and we revisited these often. This means establishing what talk in your group will look like, feel like, and sound like. This is again where your students are in the driving seat. The group established that wait time was important, as was everyone having their say. I introduced the concept of building on others' ideas. Not my concept, but as a concept it was new to the group and they really embraced it. The group established I was fortunate that I was recording or annotating some of the conversations as part of a project that I was undertaking at the time. I also conducted regular questionnaires and surveys within the group. Google Forms is great for that. So that informed my practice, but building on what Hayley has said, I see now that I could have actually involved students in creating those questionnaires as well, and that would have given me a whole different set of data to explore. In one of the student questionnaires, I asked about building on others' ideas. Students responded that we build on others' ideas to create a bigger discussion from one small idea and to complement and add to each other's thoughts and ideas to make us the best we can be. This collective power or collective agency is powerful stuff. The talk experience through the WVC was rich and sometimes involved with giving one prompt or provocation in order to start it off. Here's another example from the group. After listening to students talk during one session, I asked, when we talk about Aboriginal people as they or them, what do we mean? What do we need to be aware of? Someone said, is it offensive? And I'd like for us to discuss that. We came back to the rules for talk, respectful listening, space for discussion, exploration, and intent. It was really important for me to frame this neutrally and without judgment, so that students could move into exploratory talk. I believe this approach was one that led to countless conversations that led the WVC into developing a shared understanding of what and how they wanted to elevate and celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. People, culture, and create a connection they saw as missing in their school and community. Of equal importance was developing the capacity to have those hard conversations. Conversations of diverse views and dissent. Moving from talk that is initially cumulative through to disputational and into exploratory talk. The WVC was a guiding coalition and my role was more peripheral. I could help by facilitating meetings with key stakeholders, the leadership team, school council, and the school council president. I can't emphasise enough how important relationships student groups form with others outside of your community are, which Rosanna also demonstrated, the cafe owner, making those broader connections. I think part of our role as teachers is to help recruit supporters for our students. That means the parents of the students you work with, members of the leadership team, and the school council president. As I mentioned in my article, the school council president and I would meet for early morning coffees and walk the streets around the school. I would talk her ear off about the students' conversations, their initiatives, their passion and their drive. We too had a cafe and we would have hot chocolates. This extended to inviting first elected members from our council to meet with the school council president until more of the group joined. After we had our hot chocolate meeting, we would walk back into the school and you could see the pride, the power and the difference it made. The students really felt that they owned the space. They had a meeting with someone who was a stakeholder and powerful change maker, and just walking through the school grounds, they were commenting on things like, that's a display board that we don't use. Why don't we put this here? It added to the ownership and the sense of pride that the students felt in their school. Amongst many things, they hosted a visiting MP, they hosted a visiting academic, and engaged in a challenging and thought-provoking conversation with him, utilising the dialogic talk skills they developed. Their most enduring legacy, though, is a change they created in renaming and rebranding, for want of a better word, the house groups. Every student in the school is assigned a house group, and you compete for your house in various sporting events throughout the year. The WVC ran a complex campaign embedded with multiple points of access for whole school student voice and participation to change the house groups. They engaged with an elder and found the Woiwurrung language names of 7 native animals to represent the houses. The whole student population voted for the 4 animals they wanted representing their houses. Next, the committee led a campaign attributing an animal to a house. Bunjil the eagle to greenhouse, Marin the kangaroo to gold house, and so on. The WVC hosted the assembly at which this was announced with fanfare and confetti. The students went wild. They were invested, they had cast their vote, and they wanted their choice. Next, the committee opened a school-wide competition for students to design a logo for their house. The winners would work with a local Wurundjeri Wurundjeri artist to develop elements of their design alongside elements of traditional art. This involved presenting to school council in order to secure the funds required to pay the artist. Watching the students speak was awe-inspiring. They were eloquent, passionate, and they had dictated and owned it all. Many of the WVC graduated at the end of last year, and I've since left the school also. I wonder where in my process as facilitator and scaffolder did I embed the process and the group in a long-standing capacity. Again, watching your talk reminded me of that. Where are the WVC now? Where will they go? I wonder what the new recruits think of the statement of commitment, and if they would like a voice in rewording it to make it their own. Thank you.
You talked a bit about the statement of commitment that you wrote at the document. What did that generally concern?
Okay, so what it was nutting out what we were doing, what we were committing to, and making sure that then we would be accountable for things that we said we wanted to do and were we actually doing them. So it's things like we commit to showing tolerance and understanding to different views. We commit to elevating and celebrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices. We commit to trying to increase the representation. So representation can mean things like, if you look in your classroom, how many books are written about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? How many books are written by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? Do you have a map in your classroom that shows all the countries within Australia? Let me guess, your teacher last year did. So that sort of thing, asking, and the commitment then comes back to, so at the end of the day we can say, are we doing these things that we say we're going to do, and are we making these into actions, these beliefs into actions? Thank you. Pleasure.
Yeah.
That's my question.
In terms of sort of implementing, I guess, like Indigenous topics and even like Indigenous learning styles and all those kind of things in the classroom, how did you sort of find a way to do that without it appearing to be tokenistic and just sort of like a one-off thing, and instead making sure it's done in a respectful but also maintained way?
That is such an excellent question, and it's one that I honestly can't answer to this day because I think it's a process we're moving towards. I think that there's definitely a need to move away from the tokenistic representation, and I think we have things like NEDOC Week where everyone jumps on the bandwagon, and we need to look at ways to make it more sustainable. And a really good way to do that could even be things like auditing your school. So you can look at your curriculum, not just in a specific area, so civics and citizenship or history. You can audit your curriculum and look at where there's little opportunities to integrate Indigenous perspectives. So, for example, in maths, you could easily incorporate Budge Bin, which is one of the oldest aqueduct systems in the world. Sorry, not aqueduct. It's it's on Gunditjmara country, and basically eels were very much part of the Gunditjmara culture and people. They knew how to care for them, and they built a huge system that funnels eels into various pools. And that system is made of rock and also was made of traditional weavings. So in a maths unit, you could easily look at that and get, all your theories of, well, I'm going to primary school level here, but area, but you could do advanced maths around that. You could do a tourism brochure. How can we advertise Budge Bin? What are the local sites of meaning and culture are we not looking at? So you could do something like that. So a really thorough auditing of your curriculum and looking around your classroom and saying, where are Aboriginal voices represented here? Where are they missing? Looking at your school, looking at your community, really engaging with elders is really crucial. And also being mindful that due to stolen generation and history, some people are not as comfortable as identifying as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander now, so having that balance and respect as well, and having those hard conversations.
Did you have any cultural PDs for staff that were really helpful in embedding Indigenous perspectives? I know that's something that we're looking at as a school at the moment, and we have a parent group that we consult with. But I think finding those resources is sometimes part of the challenge. Did you have anyone that you were actually
Absolutely, I've done the same thing. So if you're in a government school, you can have CUST training, and there's CUST reps. So I highly recommend getting in touch with your local CUST person, and CUST will offer training. The Koori Heritage Trust, I did an amazing training through them, which I highly recommend as well. And that really goes historically into First Nations history and white Australian policy, and looking at contextually, I guess, some of the elements that have contributed to where we are right now. So I highly recommend that. Going to your local elder for your country, and getting in touch with places like, well, SED is more social education Victoria, but they do have some sort of links to that. But and seeing if anyone in your community does identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, but also being aware that the onus isn't on them to represent. So it's that really fine tension. So
did you feel like once you did the wholesome PEs and sort of up to the education, that the teachers were a little bit more comfortable in teaching?
So that was another thing that I found and I spoke about, and I actually spoke to one of the cultural leaders at Budge Bin about, and I filmed him because I was in the TEP last year, and as part of my presentation, and he is a Gunditjmara man, and he was basically saying to us as teachers that saying we're scared is not good enough, saying we're frightened of parent backlash is not good enough, and that if we are doing something, and moving towards it, then that's what we need to be moving towards as educators. And it is, I definitely understand that. It can be a scary place. I'm now in a private school, and I feel that perhaps my position could be tenuous based on any views I express, but fortunately I'm very supported in that. And so I'm doing the Indigenous Culture Unit with Year 5s, and most parents were very accepting of that. There are a couple that weren't, and I guess that it just comes from, there is no time for fear anymore. It just has to be, and bringing it back to the facts and bringing it back to curriculum. It is in the curriculum. There are multiple points where we are obligated to teach it, and then factually these things did happen. So it's
How do you relate the student voice to the Aboriginal elders?
Ooh, question. Good question. So I guess when we began exploring what was missing in our school, which we really didn't have many representations of Indigenous, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander peoples or cultures, we found through our research and the discussions that we were having, and the students identified that they needed to reach out to an elder, because an elder in a community is a knowledge keeper and they have the history. And then we were invited to share in that. So the students then were able to express views they felt were expressed by the elder, and that things that they felt they'd learned from the elder. And they also sort of started talking amongst themselves and asking why they hadn't been taught these things and wanting to know more.
Hi, I'm Gail from Parents Victoria, representing parents in the government school system, but I'd be really interested to know, as you've touched on just coming here about parents, I was really interested to know in your presentation in regard to how you engage the whole parent community in this journey forward, and about how you do that effectively with communication.
So a lot of it, I think as well, perhaps one of the benefits of being a primary teacher as opposed to a secondary teacher is we have more points of communication with parents, and it can be more informal at the classroom door. It can be, we had a very engaged parent community, and I definitely was willing to put myself out there to engage with the school council president. So getting her on board was vital, and then having those walks with her, she then was very enthusiastic in what she was presenting. So one of the other projects our school has done is this huge mural by the Indigenous artists that work with the students on doing the logos. So that cost a significant sum of money, and we needed to have that signed off. So the students did a presentation, and I was very upfront with the kids, and they actually looked at the budget, they looked at the quote, they had all the financials in front of them, and we had that discussion of how can we get this greenlit. And the parents, they presented to the parent association, and then they presented to school council. And the presentation at school council was particularly moving, and one of the parents actually became quite teary, speaking about how proud he felt that his son had been part of this movement in moving the shift of education from where he had been as a primary school age student to where he felt his son was now being. We had lots of inserts in newsletters written by the students. Not so much email. I know parents don't like their emails being blown up with school communications, so it was more just through school newsletter, word of mouth, school council president, school council, and a parent group, and the kids, the students going and speaking to them just really open-heartedly, which was, I thought, very powerful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have I was going to ask you how you found when they were in contact with the elders and that kind of thing, how doing that through the right kind of way.
Yes, so that is a hugely challenging question, and I think at the moment a lot is happening and our elders are really busy, and I also think that conversations need to be had around, I think schools are constrained by budgets, and elder knowledge has value and worth, and if we are willing to do things in a way that is sustainable, meaningful and authentic, we need to pay for knowledge. And that is again where, as students, you have a very powerful voice, because you are able to talk to the people around you about the knowledge you would like and the importance of remuneration for that knowledge. So elders are busy, things take time, it takes patience, but they are very open. Murrindindi was at a recent conference that I went to, and he is a beautiful man who is really open and willing to engage with people, so it's worth reaching out to him. But elders are really booked up and busy, so it's not a fast process. But in the meantime, you can read stories written by Indigenous people that tell you a lot of, that share culture through their own language and words, and you can build your own capacity through a lot of visual resources. There's a lot, the AVC have a lot of great things as well, and you can just do best to upskill ourselves. That's all we can do, is do our best and be very open to getting it wrong, and being very willing to apologise and move on and try and do better. And yeah, just give it a go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.